Our second speaker is Harry Verhaar, who is president of the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association, and he'll speak on accelerating the transition from light poverty to socio-economic development. Harry.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, UNESCO, for leadership on the International Year of Light. In the beginning, we have a 1-minute movie, which we would like to show you. So I hope everything works. Okay, so that was a movie. I think now the PowerPoint should come on. Yep. So I'm representing the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association. Does it come? Maybe one more click. And maybe just a brief word on the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association. You've heard our CEO, Eric Grondela of Philips Lighting, speaking about ending light poverty. It's about 3.5 years ago that together with a number of upstart companies like D-Light, Barefoot Power, Green Light Planets, but also some larger companies like ourselves and Willbank IFC that we sat together in Nairobi at a Lighting Africa conference. And we felt we need to accelerate this transition. One more in presentation. Can you put it on the screen? 1 second. View. Okay, now we're all set. That we needed to accelerate this transition because indeed if we can send men into space and even comets to land on a 4-kilometer, rockets to land on a 4-kilometer comet to look from close by, well, that looks like we should certainly also look around us at those 1.3 billion people who don't have access to energy. And then the first service that people then acquire once they have access to energy is light. The same way as our grand and grandparents actually, the first mass electric appliance was the incandescent light bulb after we got access to affordable energy. So the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association today has 45 members covering, I would say 75% of the solar LED market. Also, IFC is a member, Fraunhofer Institute and some others, and it's our mission to accelerate this transition and to end light poverty. As mentioned, 1.3 billion people without access to artificial light, but also 1 billion people who have irregular access, so intermittent access to energy and to light. So about 1 in 3 persons on the planet doesn't have what the other people have. And that actually is not only something that fits, as maybe people would think, into the area of development or of corporate social responsibility and all that, but it's actually much more mainstream. It actually then let's say, reducing their ability to develop in the same way as society in most of OECD countries has developed over the past few generations. Also, it means that a large part of their income spending is spent on fossil fuel, on kerosene. So in some households, on average, this is about 10%. Well, we don't spend 10% of our income on energy, but for some it's even up to 30%. So you can imagine, even if energy prices go up, they often face real choices. Do I still spend something on paper to write on for their kids to be educated or other things? It's really, let's say, much harder choices than many of us have to make. So this is not only, let's say, something that we should solve from a social perspective, but it's also very economical to solve it. Taking, like I mentioned, taking up to 10 to 30% of people's income is something that we can greatly reduce. I believe in OECD countries we spend like 2 to 3% on energy, so that means quite a big difference. And the solution is there. So it's solar LED lighting. So instead of, let's say, making available lighting technology that we have here today, it's more about leapfrogging into the 21st century. And there are many more solutions. You see here something, this is not a product presentation, but there are quite a few for household environments, but also equally so, the expansion of the global population with about 2.5 billion people till 2050, we should also realize ourselves that most of those people will be living in currently emerging and developing countries and will be living in new city infrastructure. So also there we should think about leapfrogging towards solar LED street lighting, zero energy solutions. Again, leapfrogging into the 21st century. And the benefits are significant. So you see some mentioned here, enabling education. So by lengthening the day, enabling small economic activities by lengthening the day, improving health. So by kerosene lighting alone, 1.5 million people, mostly women and children, they die per year. And added to that open fire cooking, which 2.5 billion people still do, there's 4 million deaths a year from toxic fumes from open fire cooking and kerosene lighting, which is more than HIV/AIDS. In essence, the economics is also very significant. So there we could take away the emissions of 90 million tons of CO2, which comes from 25, please listen to me, 25 billion liters of kerosene used for lighting. And in fact, it also creates jobs. So the number of people, I'll come back to that. So what I'm saying here at the core is that this is not just about poor people, development aid, something we can do on a Friday afternoon, but where we see that today in this world, we very often look at differences. We are 1% different, be it in color, religion, language, whatever. We are 99% identical in everything, but we focus very much on the differences. Whereas there's so much more to be learned from the analogies. And if you look at an analogy, which I find one that is really striking, is when you look back 3-4 generations ago, late 19th century, so when my grandparents were born, here in Europe, the same situation, let's say a comparable situation was in place. There was shoddy healthcare, there was lack of access to energy, there was no electricity, there was lack of education, and everything. And even I found 6 years ago, shortly after my father passed away, that there was a small, let's say, also personal relationship to that, because I looked into genealogical files, and where my father had said that his grandfather, so my great-grandfather, was an only child. I've actually found he was the 4th child, the only surviving one, of the 2nd wife of his father. And they lived in a situation when there was lack of, let's say, access to energy. There was shoddy healthcare, there was high population growth. So in a sense, you see what we succeeded in solving, in addressing in OECD countries in 3 generations, we should be able to solve for this 1.3 billion people in 1 generation. Currently, there are a little over 28 million people in Africa who now have access to solar LED lighting, and this already produces 15,000 jobs in sub-Saharan Africa. So if we succeed in providing access to energy and access to solar lighting to the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, this would create 500,000 jobs. So it's very much also a matter of economic development. So here you see how we need to accelerate the transition, because 28 million is only a tiny fraction of the 1.3 billion. And for that, there are a couple of things we need to do. And I'll show you here a list. We should reduce fossil fuel subsidies. Did you know that the annual amount of kerosene subsidies is sufficient for the full transition, for the full global market transition from kerosene to solar LED lighting? And then all those years thereafter, those governments would not have to spend that money on kerosene subsidy again. So there is no more economical case than ending light poverty. Also, what is important is to eliminate import duties on new technologies. We see quite often now that some countries, they install import duties and value-added taxes on solar LED lighting, but also on other more sustainable and clean tech solutions, because it's a source of income. But it's actually holding back the future, and it's something that can be easily reduced. And then the economic growth in itself will bring much more economic contributions than those duties per se. And for quality standards, because also for those people who then, let's say, get on the spiral of socio-economic development, these are quite significant investments. It can be financed maybe by utilities and others, but so we also need to ensure that they buy proper quality and don't, let's say, have products that in a couple of months cease functioning. Also here, because we see it's a cross-ministerial subject, I would call on ministries of energy, economics, finance, education, trade and health to do their bit and to make this a joint integrated development agenda. And in that way, free up the way to further grow this marketplace in their own interest. So like I mentioned, I said 45, but things are going fast. It's actually 46 members there now, so from small to large. So we are very enthusiastic about the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association and working together as a team in accelerating this market transition. So our aim is to end light poverty by 2030, and we hope indeed with many of you from the many countries that you represent and through UNESCO and the inspiration given by the International Year of Light 2015 that we can really make a difference and to do something, to end something that should have been ended maybe in the past, but it certainly is the wisest socio-economic, but also development thing that we can do. Thank you very much.